The Tommy Schnurmacher Podcast. Listen to the show live, weekdays 9 to noon on CJAD 800.
Well, CNN added another clock to its U.S. government shutdown coverage. You've got the hours towards the impending debt ceiling deadline ticking down and the days of the shutdown ticking up. And now a possible solution, temporary though, offered up by the House. If Speaker Boehner is able to push this through, the deadline would be extended by 6 weeks to Thanksgiving Day. Around November 22nd, though not agreed to by President Obama, at least both sides have agreed to keep talking. That's the step before they begin negotiating. Government gridlock. Frustrating. It's hard for the general public to swallow or to even understand, and we need professional help to sort through all of these late-breaking issues. Who better than superstar trends analyst and the publisher of the TrendsJournal, Gerald Celente, who joins me now. Good morning.
Good morning, Tommy. Thank you.
Okay, so explain this latest development in the shutdown first, and then we'll get to the impending debt ceiling deadline. Tell us about this U.S. government shutdown.
Let me put this in technical terms. You have the inepts and the incompetents dealing with each other. I mean, this is they say that this is political theater with all the wrangling back and forth, and it's true when they say that politics is show business for ugly people. There's nothing that the government can do that they've done right, and I say that without any sarcasm. I say with complete truth. You cannot point to one thing that the Republicans and the Democrats have done that has benefited the people of the United States in at least the last, in most of my lifetime, I mean, at least the last 30 years. When you talk about the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, that's brought to you by the Republicans and Democrats. That wonderful war in Libya that we have now going on that's destabilized the entire region, brought to you by the Nobel Peace Prize winner. Afghanistan, Iraq, brought to you by George Bush. How about Obamacare? Look at the failures. They can't even get the website to work. Really, I'm not making that up.
No, wait a second. You have to explain that to me. I mean, America's the land of opportunity. You've got companies like Amazon that are spectacular, making a fortune. The customers are very happy with it. I mean, how is it possible to spend that much money on a website and not know what's going on and not expect a lot of people to log on? What went wrong with that?
Again, it's everything. Look at the new scandal that just came out about the NSA building. You know, this like $40 billion building or some ridiculous number, and the computers keep crashing. It's everything that they do. And again, why would any – and look, this whole debt crisis thing has been going on now. This is going into the third year. Remember the fiscal cliff, and they did the same thing. They just extended it back in August of 2011, and as a result of that, Standard & Poor's downgraded U.S. debt. This whole thing, look at the tapering incident. That's out of the news. Oh, and this other thing, and I want to make this clear to everyone out there, all of this thing that they keep showing, they closed the national parks, they closed the monuments, right? You see it all over. Do you know how much the national budget is for the national parks and monument? $3 billion. That's 0.07% of the total budget, which is essentially $4 trillion. The moral of that story is nothing for the people. And I say that with all honesty because they announced that with the government shutting down, they're going to furlough 800,000 workers. Yeah, for a couple of days, and they brought back in 400,000 private military contractors. So, but they closed the parks.
Your questions for Trends analyst Gerald Celente, publisher of the TrendsJournal, 514-790-0991. Trend your comment, your question to 514-800. This texter, Don, wants to know, can you ask your guest to comment on Planet X and about a planned power outage slated for November?
Yeah,
what's that all about?
That.
You don't.
Yeah.
Okay. Dave wants to know, what are your thoughts on Obamacare's effect on small and medium business?
It's going to hurt everyone, and this is not socialized medicine. First, we had too big to fail. There's no such thing as that in capitalism, bailing out financial institutions, banks, and insurance companies, and auto companies, etc. And now you're having the American people are being forced to buy insurance from private insurance companies. and if you don't buy, you're fined. So what's happening is you already saw the effect again. The lying politicians. Oh, they're always going to balance the budget, too. That's the other funny one.
Yeah.
You elect me, I'll budget. Yeah, okay. But anyway, you go back to the presidential election. Both candidates said that they would not raise taxes on the people. They did. They raised the payroll taxes. You could already see the result of that in retail sales. That's a fact. You can see it. This is going to hurt retail sales because, Tommy, 95% of the jobs that have been created in the United States in the last year have been part-time jobs. So, yes, this is going to hurt. And, by the way, it's not going to do anything to improve the health care of America, considering the health of the American people. You could have the best health care program in the world, but when you have the most obese people in the world that are taking more prescription drugs than anybody else, it's not going to do much.
Now, the debt ceiling, it seems to us watching this from Canada that it's really just a joke, that people stand around and say, we have a debt ceiling, you can't go higher than that. And whenever they get anywhere near it, they go higher than that, but put up a fight a few days before back and forth. It's been raised dozens of times, and it's not really a debt ceiling. This is really to continue borrowing the money to pay what you've already used up. Would that be correct?
That's correct. Now, here's the thing. Considering how long, I didn't think this shutdown would last this long. And considering what's going on, if there's a default on the debt, there's some speculation out there that they may be doing this intentionally to devalue the dollar. They did this once before, by the way, 1933. They called a bank holiday. If this turns into a crisis, they could easily call a bank holiday.
Explain a bank holiday.
You can't get your money out. That's nice language. Holiday, holiday. You're going to steal your money. When you get it back, it's not going to be worth what it was. And I don't say that, again, sarcastically. That's a fact. In 1933, they forced the people to turn in their gold. The dollar was pegged to gold at $20.62 an ounce. If you didn't turn it in, you violated the law. Okay, so they get the gold in, or they think they get all of it in, and what happens next? They repeg the price of gold to $35. That means that you just lost 70% of your purchasing power. There's concern now that what's going on now, may be an excuse to call this thing that's running out of control. The United States is never going to be able to pay off its $16.7 trillion worth of debt. So they devalue the currency. They've done it before. And that's what some speculation out there, that Cyprus, by the way, was the canary in the mine shaft. How much could we get away with this? What will be the implications? So that's another story floating around.
This texter just has this question for you. Can you please ask Mr. Celente if the solution is to take power away from the U.S. Federal Reserve and retake control of their currency and their debt? That's from Gilbert.
That's definitely one of the things. The Federal Reserve, as everyone knows that knows anything about it, is as federal as Federal Express. It's a private bank. It is what the United States presidential elections throughout the 1800s were primarily about. Not establishing a central bank, a private bank to control the nation. It's against Article 1, Section 8, Clause 5 of the Constitution, because that gives the Congress the sole power to regulate and print money, regulate the supply and print money. This is a criminal operation. As I see it, it has no place in the United States, considering the power that they have over the people.
How do you describe the way President Obama has been handling this crisis so far?
As well as he's handled all the other crises so far. It's another read my lips, no new taxes. I smoked, but I didn't inhale. I didn't have sex with that woman, Monica Lewinsky. Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction and ties to Al-Qaeda, and you saw it with Syria. Hey, how about closing Guantanamo? I got one for you. We're going to give this guy the Nobel Peace Prize, and he's going to add another 33,000 troops into Afghanistan and expand the military operations. I could go on for a day. So it's everything he does. It's all jive talk.
What will we see in this debt ceiling deal, Gerald? What will the Democrats give the Republicans, and are we going to be going through this again in 6 weeks?
what they're going to negotiate, and you keep hearing it both from the Democrats and the Republicans, is cutting back on Social Security, on Medicare, and what they call entitlements, as though we're not entitled to it. We pay the money into the system, and then they call it entitlements. That's what they're going to do. You haven't heard one utterance coming from either party about closing or cutting back on the military-industrial complex, which eats up over half of our budget. And then you also look at this whole NSA scandal. According to the Financial Times, Tommy, we the people provide $80 billion worth of our money for the NSA to spy on us, and that money primarily goes to private contractors who are running the operations. So anything they're going to do, it's like what they do in every other country around the world when there's financial problems. They call them austerity measures. They raise the taxes on the people, they cut the pensions, they cut the benefits, and they'll probably raise the retirement age till after you die.
Joe just sent us a text. Why doesn't the U.S. government, distract the public with a values charter bill? It's working well in Quebec, as we never talk about Quebec's bankrupt finances. Let's get to the phones. Ron has a question for you. Good morning.
Yeah, I know you're talking before about the banks taking your money and not giving it back, and I wanted to ask you about your friend Jon Corzine there. I know one of the reasons that they don't prosecute him, and this is common in other cases like that, is that they don't have enough money in their budget, and I'm sure with the austerity measures they'll have even less money. But why won't the government ever make like conditions that if that they will take a piece of the settlement and refinance the offices that prosecute these people and generate more money for the government? I mean, we already paid a lot of money into the system, and now it's been misappropriated. Let's get some of it back.
Well, first, you're right. The Commodities Future Trading Commission has the grand total of $300 million budget. I mean, it's a joke. And then you look at who's the head of it, Gary Gensler. Gary Gensler, where did he come from? Oh, Goldman Sachs. Now, wait a minute. Didn't Jon Corzine, wasn't he the CEO of Goldman Sachs and Gensler worked for him? Oh, that's right. Oh, and who was the guy that gave us too big to fail? Wasn't that Henry Paulson? Where was he from? Oh, Goldman Sachs. Wait a minute. The guy that started the deregulation of the banking industry and killed Glass-Steagall, wasn't that who was that? Robert Rubin. Yeah, Robert Rubin. He was the CEO of Goldman Sachs, right? Who's the head of the central bank in Europe? Draghi. Where's he from? Goldman Sachs. It's one gang, so they're not going to prosecute each other. These are just making it look like the Bananas and the Gambinos have a guy there that's going to give them, that's going to be their moral guide. It's a joke. You haven't seen one head on Wall Street roll.
We were speaking to somebody who's written a book called The Best Way to Rob a Bank is to Own One. He was saying that, you had too big to fail, and he used too big to jail as an insult. And instead of being insulted by it, the government decided, yeah, that's true. They're too big to jail.
That's what they did say. That's what Eric Holder said, essentially, that they're too big to prosecute. And if they did, then they would destabilize the economic system.
Is that the threat that keeps working for whatever they want to do? In other words, do what we say or else the whole system is going to be destabilized?
It's a rigged game. Look, they rigged the LIBOR game. They're rigging it's a fact. I'm not making that up. Everything is rigged. I mean, I could go down it's not only the Goldman Sachs gang, it's J.P. Morgan Chase. I mean, just look at the names. Zolnik, he was the head of the World Bank, Goldman Sachs. You had the guy over there in Canada, now he's head of the Bank of England, Carney.
Mark Carney.
Yeah, Goldman Sachs. It's a banking cartel. I'm telling you, it was the major issue in the United States elections throughout the entire 1800s, not to have the central bank run the country, and they are. And of course they're not going to prosecute anyone because it's all the same club.
Well, let's talk about what's happening in your country when it comes to unemployment and the numbers provided. Is it true that the unemployment rate that we hear about, reported by the media, doesn't count discouraged workers, people who've given up looking for a job because there aren't any to be found?
Yes, I believe that's called the U6. If anybody, to me, the most valid person following the real unemployment numbers, and anyone could go to the site, is John Williams Shadow Stats. And he really has the numbers that no one has ever challenged. So when you look at the people that are off the rolls, the people that have part-time and want full-time, you're looking at over 22%.
According to CNN, the polls are showing that it's the Republicans who are getting more of the blame for this than the Democrats. Do they deserve more of the blame?
I think it's both of them. To me, I'm a political atheist, and to me, by the way, one of the thoughts I've had lately is who made up this whole story that we have to have Democrats or Republicans or whatever parties in whatever countries running the show. And when you look again at the Founding Fathers and you listen to the words of Washington or Adams, they were totally opposed. They had the Bloods and the Crips, the Bananas, the Gambinos, the Lanskys, the Schultzes, the Democrats and Republicans. So, and you know what people do? They'll vote for somebody and they call it a lesser of two evils. The way this has to change, to me, is the non-aligned parties.
We're going to continue our discussion. Gerald Celente, my guest, publisher of the TrendsJournal. Any questions or comments you have for him? 514-790-0991. Text your question or your comment to 514-800. Now, Gerald Celente on the line. This texter, Gerald, saying that man may not like Obama policies, but jive talk, come on, that's low. And I love your show. I listen every day. What would you say?
I don't mean, stop with that. I mean, jive talk for everybody. That's all it is. Whether it's Bush, Obama, stop with that nonsense. Come on.
What can we expect in 6 weeks? What will be different when this thing comes up again?
Nothing. It'll be again. It's fear and hysteria. That's the American way. Hey, look, maybe some terrorists will be coming in. They'll have something to have. It's continual state of fear and hysteria. That's what America has become. And so if it's not a geopolitical issue, it's a financial issue. Remember Syria a couple of weeks ago?
And what happened?
What happened? And that says something, too, for the people. There is real hope, not, phony hope or change you could believe in. The people are disgusted with this stuff. They don't want to go to war anymore. They see how fruitless it is. And look what happened, too, when you're looking at the polls. The latest polls are coming out. Congress is at an all-time low. And the president's ratings continue to sink. So there is something in the wind. We can go in a more positive direction if we had an alternative, but we don't.